This year's €150,000 Einstein Foundation Individual Award honors Simine Vazire, a professor of psychology, ethics, and well-being at the University of Melbourne in Australia, a true pioneer, reshaping how science is conducted and shared. Through initiatives like the Society for the Improvement of Psychological Science and the journal Culabra, she has championed openness and rigor in research, inspiring change far beyond psychology, motivating and empowering young researchers, and influencing the future of science worldwide. Congratulations, Professor Vazir, and thank you for joining us. Let me
Thank you.
begin by asking you, at what moment did it become clear to you that you needed to take an active role in reforming psychological science?
Thanks. In 2013, I spent a sabbatical year at the Center for Advanced Study in the Behavioral Sciences, and I think it was in the right place at the right time. Psychology's replication crisis was hitting its peak, and I went to a weekly journal club run by Leif Nelson at UC Berkeley. And I'd already started worrying about the quality of research practices in psychology, and I think taking a close critical look at what our field was publishing each week with a bunch of other smart people was, I guess, what pushed me over the edge. That year, I started my blog and I shifted my research to focus more on the replication crisis. And I also got more involved in journal editing. I applied for my first editor-in-chief position later that year. I lived with my mom that year, and going for walks with her and telling her about what was going on in my field, I could see it through the eyes of a non-academic who expected researchers to be better than we were. And that really motivated me to want to make things better.
Well, I guess this came with a lot of challenges. So which ones were the most difficult to overcome?
Yeah, at first it was pretty isolating working on this stuff. I think the reform movement in psychology was contentious in part because many psychology researchers are genuinely motivated by wanting to help people, whether that's reducing prejudice or helping children learn better or helping people improve their relationships. We're passionate about what we study, and the public is also craving answers to these questions. So everyone wants to believe that we've found the answers. So when you're challenging the integrity of the research process, you're kind of raining on everyone's parade. And on your own parade, too, of course. A big part of what motivated me was atoning for my own sins. I realized that I'd lost some of the idealism that most of us come into research with, and I felt guilty about that. Being around students and early career researchers was invigorating. It allowed me to reconnect with the idealism and remember that there are people counting on us to study these important topics rigorously and with integrity. I had to remember that it's exactly because these questions are so important and so difficult to answer that we need to study them rigorously and be careful not to claim victory prematurely. And then once the reform movement in psychology really started gaining steam, I think the hardest challenge was, or has been, the hearts and minds problem. Researchers will adopt new practices if others are doing it and if it's easy enough to do, but for many of the reforms in psychology, like pre-registration, it's not enough to go through the motions. You have to really care about why you're doing it. And for many of these reforms, the reason to care is if you believe that we as researchers are very susceptible to bias and error, and we need to take steps to protect ourselves. And convincing people that they shouldn't trust themselves is a tall order. I think the best way to do that is probably to normalize mistakes, show how common they are and how even the most successful researchers make them. And I'm doing my part here. I make so many mistakes.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. So, with the award now, how can this help you to move forward?
Well, the award helps validate my choice to spend time on this topic of how to improve research quality in my field. It's a controversial career choice and not one that's always rewarded, so it's easy to question the wisdom of that decision. But I've been really lucky to have so much support from mentors and colleagues and students and friends. So I've been able to make risky decisions like spending a lot of my time on this research integrity stuff and trying to put it into practice in my role as a journal editor. Most people have to do those things around another full-time job or in addition to another line of research. So in my mind, the award belongs just as much to all the people who made it possible for me to make this the focus of my work for the last 10 or so years, and the people who championed me more than I ever deserved. And so the award will allow me to continue to make research quality the focus of my work.
Super. So, what efforts to enhance the quality of academic research should, in your view, take center stage over the next 2 or 3 years?
So I think we need to confront the fact that science isn't magically self-correcting. To quote James Heathers, we have to correct it, and that's slow and painful. In psychology, we've made a lot of progress on increasing transparency, though it's still far from perfect. But transparency is growing, and that change is irreversible. So it can be tempting to stop there and think our work is done. But unfortunately, transparency isn't the same thing as quality. Transparency makes it possible to evaluate quality, but someone still has to go in and do the checking, and that's hard work. Everyone wants everything to happen faster and faster. Researchers are producing research faster, and we want peer review to happen faster. But if we want to incentivize accuracy and rigor, we have to slow down. We have to accept that doing good research and evaluating research takes time. Lots of people, at least in psychology, thought that open science was slow and painful, but I have bad news. That was the easy part. Now we have to use all of that transparency to go in and stress test the research. Otherwise, all the transparency is just window dressing. They're going to ask us, what did your field learn from its crisis? I want to be able to say not only that we realize we have to be a lot more transparent, but also that we learn to slow down and be more careful before we say we discovered something.
So if there were a, let's say, rigor fairy, if you had one wish to improve the academic world, what would it be?
My wish is that we expect more of journals, especially those that we treat as prestigious. Well, if I'm wishing, I should also wish that we get rid of for-profit publishers and make all journals community run. But even then, journal prestige will continue to exist, so it should mean something. Getting accepted in a selective peer-reviewed journal should mean something. Now that journals can ask researchers to be transparent, there's no excuse for journals not to do a thorough job of evaluating the quality of what they publish before we stake our field's reputation on it. And we should also check that journals are doing their job, look for errors and biases in the published articles, do some audits. This is where meta research can be really useful. It can tell us if a journal isn't doing a good job, and then we should stop giving that journal prestige. Prestigious journals that are bad at quality control are misusing the authority of science, and now is not a good time to be undermining trust in science.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Partially also my wish. So thank you very much. That was a very interesting discussion or conversation. Congratulations again
Thank you.
to you. And goodbye.
Thanks. Bye.